It's 12 noon Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. Time to call to order the public meeting of the City of Las Vegas Historic Preservation Commission. Will City Clerk please call the roll and determine if we have a quorum and identify those commissioners that are on a conference call.
Thank you. Chair Stodel,
Present.
Vice Chair Laramie.
She's on her way.
Commissioner Levine. Commissioner Hotchkiss. Commissioner Serfas. Commissioner Cosgrove. Commissioner Palacios.
Here.
Commissioner Moody.
Here.
Commissioner Perdue. Commissioner Roberts. Commissioner Seabrandt.
Here.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum, and we don't have anyone on the phone.
Thank you. Let's then move on to agenda item 2. Question to the city clerk. Has the announcement regarding the meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission been made in compliance with the state's open meeting law?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, public comment. This is the first public comment period. During this period, all comments must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. Would anybody like to speak at this point? Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 4, which is the chair's announcement relative to the Historic Preservation Commission. This is not a discussion or an action item, it's simply announcements. And the announcement that I have is a sad one. This past week, we lost a very important member of the Southwest United States, Las Vegas, and the Las Vegas Historic Preservation Commission. Through her intellect, her ethics, hard work, passion, and a great smile, Colleen Beck led a fight for historic accuracy and preservation, New Mexico to California, with most of her work focused here in Nevada and in Las Vegas. Her resume is book length, with a storyline that points to the values of individuals, of cultures, and to society in general, by providing a factual foundation of the people and the story of the Southwest. While she leaves behind a library of work, the ongoing contributions to the preservation of the history of Las Vegas will be deeply missed. Well, I wrote here personally, Colleen was a nice person with a great family. We all know that. That's pretty obvious. We all like Colleen a lot, and we'll remember her, I do, for the great smile and the joy she had in our last Eldorado parade. She just really enjoyed that and loved the history and loved hearing the people along the parade saying, clapping and talking about preservation. That just really lit her up a lot. As a member of the HPC, I look forward to an agenda item, which is number 11, and the expansion of the Commission's award process as an opportunity to recognize Colleen and her career, covering that many decades of her career. And Dr. Seabrandt and I, Dr. Seabrandt has an idea, and we'll get to that at that point when that agenda item is in. So, and we'll also have a little bit more about Colleen a little bit later on in today's agenda with a presentation that staff has prepared. Move on to agenda item 5. This is the agenda item regarding the draft of the minutes of the last regular meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. That was on September 25th, 2024. Are there any proposed changes, corrections, or amendments to the minutes? If not, oh, sorry, please.
Sorry, Commissioner Roberts. All in all, it covered the lengthy comment that I made at the end. Was I know it's not a exact transcription, but it seemed to be cut quite short, where certain specific names and whatnot were omitted. I didn't go through and write a transcription of it, but I just think that there was some detail that was left out that's important there, and I just wanted to voice that.
All right. Thank you. Look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moody, I move to approve the minutes of the September 25, 2024 Historic Preservation Commission meeting.
All right, we have a motion. Further discussion by the commission? Comments from the general public? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor of the minutes. Move on to agenda item 624-044. There's 3 4s there. HPC 1. This is an abeyance item originally from the August 28th, 2024 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, which was also obeyed in September. And the chair was informed late last night that the city attorney's office will not be able to attend. So I put together some notes that I'm going to prepare, and we also have some notes from Dr. Seabrand and the director of the Community Affairs, Community Development Department. But I'm going to take a minute here, Seth, and set this thing up. More than 3 years ago, the Huntridge Theater had a new set of owners led by Jay Dapper. The purchase followed nearly a year of discussions between the state of Nevada, the city of Las Vegas, the current owners at that time, and the potential buyer, Mr. Dapper, and his company. The discussion included a series of requirements on the preservation of historic structures that would go along with the deed and were being enforced at that time by the state of Nevada, in part based on more than $1 million in grant money, public money that was used to preserve the building. Several court actions by the state against the previous owner for not following legal requirements of the $1 million grants. The court action resulted in fines and a judgment of several $100,000. After a year of negotiations between the state of Nevada, the city of Las Vegas, again the current owners, and the potential owner, Mr. Dapper, a settlement agreement was reached and signed by all parties, including the mayor and the city council and Mr. Dapper. The 12-page settlement agreement, along with close to 200 pages of back material, has been part of the board packet for the last 2 meetings and also part of this meeting. Having been part of the team that actually negotiated the transfer of the oversight from the state of Nevada to the city, the reality of what the HPC's legal responsibilities are really found in detail in the 12-page settlement. And even within that 12-page settlement, you can really narrow it down to 4 pages where it's very specific about what the city and the HPC's responsibilities are. This commission needs a full understanding of its duties, its legal duties, its requirements, its oversight. And we have been asking, as is referenced by the abeyance meeting, that this be brought up and handled by the state, by the city attorney's office, to provide us some legal guidance. What I passed out to you is something that I had shared with staff earlier, which is simply a calendar of events that coincide with our meetings and when the quarterly meetings from the Huntridge owner are due, and when the city does its, according to the settlement agreement, there are a minimum of 2 inspections required of the Huntridge. And I'm suggesting with this that one be done in the first third of the year and another one be done in the last third of the year. This is not an action item. This is simply a recommendation that I hope will become part of an action item at our December meeting. The responsibilities that we have, and again, this is not a legal document. I wrote it. So therefore, take it with a grain of salt, but it is based on the settlement agreement. And it has the requirements that the new owners are required to have. That's Mr. Dapper and his company. And what our responsibility is as to have oversight. And of course, the most important one is rehabilitation. That's the fundamental question to be answered in each of the quarterly meetings. has the new owners done reasonable diligence to cause significant progress towards the rehabilitation of the Huntridge Theater according to federal standards for rehabilitation? That's a direct quote from the settlement agreement. And that directs you to the federal requirements. And we had hoped to have the city attorney's office provide us with a link to those requirements. And we will have that to this panel before the week is out. But the federal requirements for rehabilitation is simply defined as, quote, the progress of returning a building to a state of utility through repair or alteration which makes possible an efficient use while preserving those portions and features of the building and its site and environment which are significant to the historic, architectural, and cultural values. There are more details specifically about those areas, but that's the fundamental definition that Mr. Dapper has accepted as part of his responsibility. At this point, there are additional responsibilities that I've also passed out that identify the other areas that Mr. Dapper is obliged to follow according to the settlement agreement. The other two are the maintenance and ongoing repair of the Huntridge. And that is where the judgment against the previous owners followed, because the previous owners, in fact, were not maintaining and repairing the building. They were letting it fall apart. The state took them to court twice, and the owners lost both times for not maintaining and repairing the building. That's part of the settlement agreement. That's what Mr. Dapper agreed to. The third one is a bit of a challenge in that Mr. Dapper is required to have that building open to the public for a certain period of time, but there are clearly opportunities that just to make that building available to the general public. And Mr. Dapper simply needs to make an announcement as to that it's not opening, and that's a logical and acceptable. But the biggest one is the rehabilitation and the repair and maintenance. Those are things that this commission is required to oversee the 4 times a year, and then a final report at the end of the year. Those are my notes, and the city attorney. We're going to need two things after we hear from Dr. Zebrandt and from Seth about what this commission wants to do action-wise at our next meeting. We can obey this item because and I think we should, because we need to hear legally what the city says that our responsibilities are. And then we need to develop an action plan that is clear to what we are as a commission responsible for. And also, to be fair to Mr. Dapper, these matters need to be taken care of so he can move forward, so he understands, although I'm sure he understands. But there's also a judgment of several $100,000 that was attached to the deed and is part of the settlement agreement. And if the new owner is following the rules and regulations, each year a significant portion of that judgment can be erased. And so it's a benefit to Mr. Dapper and his company that we set up this process to where if Mr. Dapper is following the rehabilitation and the rules and letting people inspect, et cetera, then each year this commission has the sole authority, and that's what it says specifically in the settlement agreement, the sole authority to make that decision. So with that, I'll turn to Diane or to Seth, whoever would like to jump in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seth Floyd for the record. So as you did mention at the beginning, John Radilla had an unavoidable conflict today, but Diane and I are prepared to pinch hit for him on, I think, most everything that you've laid out, if not everything. And so I guess I'll let you decide if you want us to proceed or we can obey the item, but we're ready to go if you'd like us to.
Well, I think we should hear the presentation first and then make a decision about whether or not we need to.
Excuse me, your mic.
I think the best course of action for right now would be to hear the presentation. If there are still some questions or the need for an action plan, then we can, as a commission, decide what we want to do, obey it or.
That sounds good, Mr. Chairman. Then we will proceed. So just a roadmap, because we have quite a bit of material to cover. So what I think I'll do first is have Diane go through, and you teed it up nicely, what the plan of action is for the HPC executing its responsibilities under the settlement agreement, and Diane has worked up a proposal for and some timelines for doing that. And then I will answer, I know that Commissioner Roberts had some questions that were specifically put to us. I will answer those questions. And then at that point, obviously, we'll open it up to you and answer any further questions and see if we've addressed enough to move this forward. If there are any remaining questions that we can't answer, obviously, we'll decide how to deal with that with Mr. Radilla at a future meeting. But let me, unless there are any questions on that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Diane to get started, and then I'll answer some of the specific questions, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. Seaborn for the record, Diane Seaborn for the record. So what you have on the slide in front of you, and this is from working with Chairman Stodel on a schedule for 2025 for the quarterly reports, as well as the on-site inspections and the final report. So this calendar was shared with Mr. Dapper, and these dates do work for him. So he would be at the March, June, and the December meetings. And the on-site inspections, what that would be, it would be me meeting Mr. Dapper, his representative at the theater, with a checklist, which we don't have yet, that's still a work in progress, of determining what has been completed, what has been done so far, what has been done in the past, and then the staff will provide a report to the commission as far as what those findings are. And again, those quarterly reports will come from Mr. Dapper himself or his representative at each meeting. That if there's questions about anything from the site inspections, it can be addressed to Mr. Dapper at that time and can be answered to the commission. And then the last item is the vote on the annual compliance. And what we will do is have it as an action item for the commission to vote on. And from those reports and from the site inspections, the commission should be able to make an informed decision if the settlement agreement has been followed, and if Mr. Dapper is in compliance. And at that time, if he is in compliance, that's when we would ask to reduce the fines that have been placed against the theater. And if they have not been met, there would be a separate action for that as well. So that's what I have for right now. If you have questions or if you want to wait until we're both done speaking, either way is fine with me.
The only question would be, comes from what you're working on as far as the inspection. And those questions that you would be asking or looking for would be very similar to what the commission would be looking for at each quarterly report. Is it being rehabilitated, or is it being maintained? We would also have a potential, that last question about the public being there. But I think that questions from the commission, I think that's clear at this point what your next step is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Diane. So let me go over, Commissioner Roberts had asked about 10 questions related to kind of digging into some more specifics about both the settlement agreement and the ongoing review of work that may have been done or be done in the future at the property. And so I think that probably the easiest way is just to go through those questions one by one, and then if I've missed anything or if you have follow-up questions, I can address those as well. So the first question was a request to provide the exact document that the city attorney, and obviously I'm not the city attorney, but I'll stand in for John here, is using to answer questions and guide the other oversight of the Huntridge property. In your backup materials, there are the 12 pages of the official signed copy of the settlement agreement. We didn't, the backup are just the exhibits. We did not include those because it's 175 pages. We can provide those if.
It's there.
Oh, it's in the
Backup
backup.
one.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought we just included the 12 pages. So what's in your backup then, without the caveat, is the settlement agreement that we are using to define the obligations of both our and your review and the owner of the property. So if you have questions, that is your reference. That is our reference document, so that would be your reference document as well. Question number 2 is the Huntridge property exempt or treated differently from the standard building permit requirements that all properties and projects are required to follow in the city? The answer is no. The only, and this isn't really a caveat to that, but the only difference is the way that we review it obviously is defined by the settlement agreement, which is different than other projects, but the codes that apply are not different. That review process just happens to be laid out in an agreement, which not every single property, in fact, no other property has that type of unique agreement on it. Question number 3, what guiding documents are used to determine when a building permit is required? If I understand the question, we have adopted, and I think this may answer question number, I think there's another question that addresses this as well. We have adopted several different codes that apply to structures in Las Vegas, and they are the 2021 International Building Code, the 2021 International Fire Code, the 2018 Uniform Plumbing Code, the 2018 Uniform Mechanical Code, the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, the 2017 National Electrical Code, and the 2019 Administrative Code. So, and those do get updated from time to time, and as those get adopted, those will apply as well. But those are the current building codes we have in place, in addition to our zoning code, Title 19. Code enforcement also uses our property maintenance code, which comes from Title, oh gosh, why am I drawing a look at this, 9 of our code, of our city code. So those are all the codes that apply, and the same codes apply to all buildings in Las Vegas.
So at that point, though, are the people that are inspecting that building, are they familiar with the other set, which is the CFR, that, for example, the coating of buildings and you can't sandblast and I mean, anything that may extend the city's building but are required now because of the CFR?
Yeah, so the one unique review that this property gets that other properties in the city don't get is Diane's engagement in the review through the settlement agreement. So Diane is looking at that, and if we were to get a call for work being done, that would trigger a review by Diane. So yes, I think the short answer to your question is yes. The longer answer is Diane has that part of the review under the, and I think there's 10 listed items under that CFR that she would be looking for. Question number 4, what guiding documents are used to determine if and when approval by the HPC is required? That comes from Unified Development Code, Section 1910-150. That is the section that outlines the Historic Preservation Commission's responsibility as added to by the settlement agreement. So you do have, as you laid it out, Mr. Chairman, there are some additional review responsibilities that you and the HPO have as part of the settlement agreement, but that is the code section where your authority and your review comes from. Question number 5, is the city code enforcement the proper entity to identify if a building permit is required? Yes, typically, well, it depends. If someone applies for a permit, our building inspectors are the ones who go out and review that. If someone does work without a permit, typically when that complaint comes in, it is code enforcement who goes out and makes that determination on whether a permit is required, sometimes in consultation with our building official if there's a question. Let's see, and I think that answers the rest of that question as well. Question number 6, there are a couple of questions in here that were asking who specifically did the review, for example, and there's 2 of them, questions 6 and 8. Who was the staff person who determined that the work that's been done was in fact repair or maintenance work? Ultimately, that's my responsibility. So that falls on me. So if there is a question of whether we properly reviewed whether work was done, I'm the one ultimately responsible. Typically, I will work with our building official to determine if the proper interpretation was made in the field. Item number 7, were any materials, hardware, components, or et cetera replaced during work conducted leading up to the sign lighting ceremony on April 7th, 2023? I don't know the answer to that question. We did receive a complaint. We sent code enforcement out to review, and the determination was made that no permit was required. So because of that, I can't tell you exactly what may or may not have been done as part of that scope of work. Question number 9 is please identify the scopes of work that have been conducted to date, including any specific locations of demolition, deconstruction, disassembly, or removal of fixtures or components from the property, and why the work was conducted. I can't answer the why work was conducted. I can tell you, I just checked this morning, there have not been any building permits pulled for the Huntridge Theater, at least not in the last, I think we looked back a year. And question number 10, how should work that is or has been conducted prior to the SHPO or Park Service packet be reviewed and approved? It would depend on the work, but if any of you, and this goes for any property, not just this one, if you observe work without a permit that you're concerned about, whether it's a historic property or not, that goes through our code enforcement division, and they will inspect that and take appropriate action. So those were the questions. Hopefully I've answered all of those. I'm happy to answer other questions that have come up, or if I didn't, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer or get an answer.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes, Commissioner Roberts, thank you, Seth and Diane. I appreciate it. I do have some follow-up clarifications for most of these. I think generally speaking, after you went through all those, I wanted to let you go through them all first instead of stopping you intermittently. But
Sorry, I can't hear you. Could you put it closer to your voice?
is that better?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
sure. So I think a general question that I would ask regarding all of this, and specifically the work that was in question to the tower and the tower neon, is that the work was conducted without a building permit. And work that's conducted on this theater, we're not able to oversee any work if we don't know that it's happening. We're not able to approve any work if we don't know that it's happening. When code enforcement went out to check on the property, that was like a year after the work had been done or something like that. So I don't know what they were looking for. I don't know what they were gonna see. And then Seth, if you're the one in charge of this, I mean, can you tell me anything about electrical circuits and branch wiring, and how well do you know the 2018 or the 2021 electrical code? I wouldn't expect that you, maybe I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't expect that you'd be very in-depth and well-versed in that. So it seems like that might be something that might need some assistance on that.
Commissioner Roberts, so the question, if you could answer the question in connection with Mr. Dapper's responsibility for ongoing repair and maintenance, and the separation between ongoing repair and maintenance and those things that may need a building permit. It sounds like, and again, to answer Dan's question that he may have of me, I don't know what I'm talking about, so that's why I'm asking the question. That it seems to me there would be a fine line between something that Mr. Dapper has to repair and maintain and then a building permit, so can you put some clarity to that? Thank you.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, I think I understand what you're asking me to do there. So there are obligations under the settlement agreement that are different from just any standard building's obligation to get a permit when you build, maintain, or repair. And those are covered by Diane's review because, of course, she's the one in our shop with the expertise in that historic component and the part that is required under the pre-rehab obligations in the settlement agreement. The more general question about how do we determine at what point work rises to the level to require a building permit is a separate but related question, and I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night, so that's about as close as I get to being an expert in the electrical code. But I am over the building department, and we have a certified building official who's ultimately responsible for making those technical calls. So I do have help. It's not just me standing up here saying I went and looked at the building and didn't know what I was looking at. All of those route through our building official. So he would ultimately make the call if there was any question. Now, I'll tell you how our process works, though, because you may be wondering how he reviews every single building in the city. He doesn't. We have code enforcement staff who are certified. And now they're very broad. They cover a lot of different ground, from everything from high weeds and grass to unpermitted work. But we also have a building inspection team, and those guys are certified. I mean, you should see the list of certifications behind their name. The electrical code, framing, grading, they have a lot of different certifications. So they are our experts who go out and do the initial reviews and determine if a permit is required. And ultimately, if there was a subjective call, that could route through the building official.
Thank you. If I could add to that, if work's going to be conducted without a set of plans, I don't know what the expert building inspector would be going off of, what they're looking at. Would they just, if I was doing work on a building, first of all, an inspector wouldn't come if I didn't have a permit for it. So that's kind of half the game. So if you get a permit, you get a stamped set of plans that are approved by the city authorizing you to do this work because they agree that these door openings are the right size, all that stuff. A lot of it is safety, as you know. And when we're talking about a commercial building and we're talking about electrical infrastructure, we're talking about high voltage circuits that can cause a fire if they're not implemented properly. Beyond that, within the realm of this commission, we're talking about changes to a historic structure and specific elements of that historic structure which are identified specifically within these guiding documents. So changes to that historic structure, both visually and otherwise, are going to be subject to this. And I'm going to go back a couple meetings and say that color changes absolutely, irrefutably fall under visual. If anybody can show me or explain to me how a color is interpreted other than visually, I would love to hear it. I could go on for a lot.
Any specific questions as
Yes.
far as the, I mean, what things, I think there's going to be a point to where the Commissioner Roberts, and you can interrupt me if I'm off on this, where Commissioner Roberts may disagree with the findings of the city or the fact that it was considered a repair. When Mr. Dapper took over that building, it was in a terrible state. And having had the opportunity to visit it before Mr. Dapper took over, I was afraid to just touch anything for fear of electrical and a variety of things. So one of the things that I understand that Mr. Dapper did was he took care of the electrical situation, all the hot wires that were there and so forth. Is that a process where in the, I don't think that's necessarily something that we as the HPC would say yes or no to as far as analyzing that. But would that be something that Mr. Dapper would have to say, here's all the loose wires, here's the hot wires, we need to cap these off, whatever the terminology is. Would that be something he would have to bring to your department?
Oh, I'm going to give a lawyer answer here and say it depends. I think it depends on the scope of the work. Now, from a historic perspective exclusively, I don't know that the internal systems that don't reflect in the exterior facade would necessarily be subject to review. Color is obviously a different story. The wiring, though, to light up the sign, I don't believe that would be necessary, unless of course it was on the outside and it changed the exterior of the building in violation of one of the Secretary of the Interior guidelines. And then as far as whether we would require a building permit for it, It depends on the scope of the work, and I would have to look at that with our building official to determine if something actually rose to the level of requiring a permit. But I would say also, I think part of the reason, and maybe we kind of glossed over why we think it's so important for you and for us to do the exercise we're doing today, is because what we're hoping to do is to formalize those quarterly reviews so that these issues as they arise are coming up, or at least have the opportunity to come up at least once a quarter, if not more often, obviously, if work's been done and we're made aware of that. So that these types of things can be addressed when they happen, if they need to be addressed. If there needs to be a permit, we can address it at that time. So I think having Diane's review happen at a regularly scheduled interval, and those on-site inspections happening at that regularly scheduled interval should help to resolve some of these questions.
And I think one of the things that Commissioner Roberts has already done is he has read over the CFR. And I think there's responsibility on the part of all the commissioners that they read it. Now, this is not a book-length document. It's maybe 3 or 4 pages. And within those pages, if you have a question about that, there is also backup material. And it's all written for non-experts like myself, the general public. And so, but it does take some responsibility on each commissioner's part to go read that. And one of the things that the city attorney had indicated he was going to try to make do was on the Planning Commission's website, that he was going to provide links to the various documents, and I hope we can get that accomplished relatively quickly so the members now we can go search and do our Google and do all that, but it would be easier if we had one spot where we could all just sort of go to.
So Mr. Chairman, we are working on that. What it would be is if you've been to our homepage recently, you'll notice there are, I don't know if tabs is the right word because I'm not the media person, but there are tabs off and links off of the website, and we are working on creating one specifically dedicated to those resources that you just described.
Great,
so that's in the works. And Mr. I don't know, if, Jeff, if you can show the overhead, I'll show you. You referenced, Mr. Chairman, the CFR requirements, and that they aren't very long, and they are pretty much written in plain English. Let me move my microphone out of the way. So this is a copy of what that looks like. And so you're right, it's not that lengthy. It's about 10 items. There are, as you said, there are some other sections that kind of explain what this is, but these are those 10 items, if you can read it. I realize it's kind of small on the screen.
And I will say that the website
Thanks,
is there's a lead into how the Secretary of the Interior, the process that they got to this point. There's some history behind it, and I think reading that history also puts things in context. These are not draconian things. These are things to help the person that's doing the rehabilitation, and also to help the oversight by whatever entity is the state of Nevada, the city of Las Vegas, or the HPC. But I suspect that everybody that's on this commission will have an interest in reading. It's about 5 pages long with the highlights that you pulled out to being the one page. But but let me just jump over and Commissioner Roberts, some additional thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to just say that, or identify that in the CFR, it's 3667.7, and that has all the answers to everything. It's very clear. It's set, and these are just standards. These are standards for any historic preservation project. I'll read one because this one's very important here. Most properties change over time. Those changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right shall be retained and preserved. Another one, distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that have characterized a historic property shall be preserved. Another one, deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, such as the neon on the tower, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and, where possible, materials. replacement of missing features shall be substantiated by documentary, physical, or pictorial evidence. I think there was a lot lacking in that last one.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Without getting into a long, please.
There you go.
No. So I was fortunate enough to tour the Huntridge Theater, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but I believe days after you closed the deal. And then I was fortunate enough again to get invited to his party that he had there the other day, and it was fantastic. I can tell you, I'm a licensed architect in the state of Nevada. I'm doing work all over the country. A lot of that work is historical preservation, adaptive reuse. What I've seen so far is a maintaining of the building. The building is not, like was said, it felt very unsafe in there. And when I took my son over for the party, it felt very safe. And those are the only things I'm seeing so far, Dan and team. I think what we need to do is, I think we need to understand that what we're looking at is somebody who's keeping a building from deteriorating further and living up to his obligation to make it a place where people can enter safely. And I would recommend, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm just going to make this statement that I think that if Dan or anybody has specific things that they think are outside of Jay's requirements, maybe just jot them down in a list, and we can talk about those specific things, because this is taking a lot of time, and I really am not sure that I've gotten exactly to what. Forgive me, Dan, but what you're looking for. So if you can maybe just, if you think the paint's the wrong color or whatever, I'd like to know that, and I'd like to have my own opinion about that, but I'm really not hearing anything specific yet. Thanks for the time. Commissioner Palacios.
I think what we're trying to, and Dan certainly can speak for himself, but what we're trying to do is clear some past questions that have been back and forth, and we've had some discussions at the meeting. And I think Mr. Dapper, one of the challenges under the CFR is to repair something back to its original state and its color. Well, the Huntridge celebrates its 80th birthday this month. I celebrated my 82nd, and my color has changed. And so the determination of what was the original color of that wall or that neon or whatever, an effort needs to be made to determine that. And I think in my personal opinion, well, in my opinion as a member of this commission, not personal, I think that at the last meeting or the meeting before, Mr. Dapper explained how he arrived at the color, whether it was the roof or the neon. Now, the disagreement with that decision can be made, but there's a process there that seemed to me to be a logical one. We don't know exactly what the color is when it was turned on in October of 1944. What's the best way to see if we can find that? And in my thinking, if that work has been done, I may not agree with the end state, but that's the process that needs to be used, and for all of these things. So, in my opinion, Mr. Dapper answered those questions because of the process, and so, Dan, what else do you have on your?
Thank you. To follow up with your statement and opinion there, I think the time for determining what the color of the neon was is gone now, because as far as I understand, the neon has all been replaced. And so because the proper methods weren't followed here of taking photos and documenting this and providing that information to this commission proactively for approval of those changes in color, which we very well may have approved, it's gone now. So we can't determine what color the neon was because it's in a landfill now. So that's the situation that we're at. So if I step back and I look at this and we look at this in a much more macro state, the important thing is that we get notification ahead of time and that we're aware of what happens before it happens. We don't want to be reactive to this, we need to be proactive. So if it's something as simple as, hey, we're gonna be doing a little work here, but I don't think it affects anything, just wanted to let you guys know in case if you wanted us to take some photos of it or something first, it's that simple. I think it's a matter of respect and it's a matter of adhering to the agreement, the legal agreement here, but to have someone on a historic building just doing what they want, when they want, we find out about it a year later, say, well, I guess it seems okay, and then we are supposed to all give a thumbs up, I'm gonna have a hard time doing that. So I don't think it's too much to ask for Mr. Dapper or anybody else for that matter to request permission or to check with this commission first, as opposed to just making the assumption that what they're doing is totally fine for one reason or another.
I would agree, and we would need to move on, but I think that, Dan, you hit exactly why we're formalizing this process. We're formalizing the dates, we're formalizing what the expectation is from Mr. Dapper at each of the meetings. I think what you just said is the opportunity that we need to have to move forward with, because it also helps Mr. Dapper. These are, excuse the language, these are the hoops that you need to, obligations that you need to fulfill. And then the questions can come from that. And there's also the issue of reducing that fine. It's to Mr. Dapper's long-term benefits, not only to reduce that judgment, but also to move the process along. And he's going to come with his quarterly report at the next meeting. So Seth and Diana, I'll let you move forward with the presentation.
So, Mr. Chairman, so I think that answers the questions, the specific questions that were posed by the commission. Where we are now, and I think we're in kind of what may be the last part and then up for your discussion, is so what is the next step? You mentioned formalizing the process, and we had the visual on the screen. One of the things we have not been as organized about is having that formal schedule to determine on an annual basis, and I'll read the exact words here, whether Mr. Dapper exercised reasonable diligence to rehabilitate the Huntridge as required by the agreement. So the plan, and I think John was probably going to talk about this in more specific detail, exactly what that agenda item would look like, but the plan would be to put an action item on for December to make that determination going back for the years that we have not made that determination, and that will allow us to start from that point going forward into 2025. So.
Just hold off for the record. What I suggest is that we would like on the December meeting first is the calendar of events. Not necessarily in this order, but the calendar of events. Secondly, the specifics under the settlement agreement of the responsibility of Mr. Dapper and therefore the responsibility of the HPC to oversight, to review. And that's very clear in the settlement agreement. It's extremely clear in the settlement. And it even covers one of the areas that expands the city's Historic Preservation Commission's responsibility. Up until this agreement was approved by the City Council in October of 2020, the HPC did not have any responsibility over the interior. It still does not, with the one exception, and that's when the state of Nevada and the city of Las Vegas agreed that the city of Las Vegas would take over from the state of Nevada, and with that, in the settlement agreement, came the specific language about the interior. So the responsibilities that the HPC has and Mr. Dapper has, that needs to be bullet point. So we can look and say, yes, responsibility, and they're very specific. And then the second one is the maintenance and repair, and there's specific language in that, both in the settlement agreement and the reference to the CFR. So that language needs to be in a document so that each time the city HPC can look and say, yes, no, yes, 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 and so forth. Then the third one is the issue of how the building has been open to the public, if it has or it had. So we need that. The third thing would be to have this website or this link place where this HPC, because this is an expanded responsibility. But it would also be, quite frankly, I would like to suggest adding the city's HPC's, also its, the ordinance. If we could just have ordinance 19 also there. And then the fourth thing would be our bylaws, the city's HPC bylaws. If they could all be in one spot. They link to each other, they overlap each other, and I think it would just help rather than having to go search different sites. And some of that is already on the city site in different places. But it'd just be nice if it was one little cubicle that the HPC could go see. So with that, those are the things that I think we need to have on the next agenda. And I don't think we're going to be ready to deal with the issue that I think is also there, and that is whether or not we can look back at year 1, year 2, and year 3 regarding what, if we have enough evidence, enough information to be able to say Mr. Dapper has or has not met the responsibilities in each of those years to reduce the judgment, I think by as much as $30,000. The biggest challenge, and this is going to come up when we talk to Mr. Dapper, is whether or not rehabilitation has actually started. There was an article on Channel 8 recently with the telephone tower that Mr. Dapper said he could delay this another year. So there's some questions there that need to be resolved. But those are the things I think we need to have as an action item for. So I'll turn it over to any commissioners that would like any additional thoughts, to any additional help to get us to make sure that we're living up to our responsibility.
Mr. Chairman, Seth Floyd, while the commission is gathering its thoughts, Jeff, if you can show the screen one more time. I'll take it, this might streamline number 2 on your action list. So John had prepared, whoops, those are my notes, you can ignore that, but John had prepared in plain English, his own words, the responsibilities of the, here, let me move this out of the way, of the HPC, and listed them here just for ease of reference. And again, I don't want to, the language of the agreement controls, but this was John's attempt to summarize those. So number 1 is to hear the quarterly reports regarding updates. That's the schedule that was on the screen a few minutes ago. Number 2, hear staff reports on the biannual inspections of the property. That was also listed in the schedule from Diane on those on-site inspections. And number 3, each December vote on annual compliance with the settlement agreement obligations. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that this settlement agreement did add a responsibility to the HPC's baseline Title 19 responsibilities as outlined in our code. This is that element where you get to determine whether, on an annual basis, whether he has exercised reasonable diligence toward rehabilitating the building. And then also number 4, reviewing and voting on any certificate of appropriateness applications that come forward. I believe one has already come before you some time ago, and you have exercised that duty. And then number 5, reviewing and voting on significant progress. This is part of that December vote on the 4 specifically enumerated requirements in the code that are in addition to the 36 CFR requirements, which are the original exterior walls, right, the marquee as it appears after 1980 and 1993, the monument side, and then as you referenced, Mr. Chairman, the interior configuration of the lobby and the theater. Those are all specifically called out in the settlement agreement. So we're happy to put that in a more formal document for your backup, but I just wanted to let you know that's kind of how we have summarized in as plain a language as we can the obligations of the agreement.
And that would be, it clearly hits the points. The challenge is, when I see a headline, headlines get shortened and things get lost, and sometimes the headline, not saying that of this, but the headline doesn't really represent what happened. And in the case of 5, I think the overriding thing that should be in there is that the CFR, it's the requirement, all these things have to fall under the CFR. And that's the standard, and I think you've got the other piece of paper that lists that. So, questions, comments from the commission? Dan, any thoughts?
The only last thing is just regarding the CFR. It's more than just that. It's more than just the 36 CFR 67. In the settlement agreement, it also identifies, I believe it's 36 CFR 68 and 36 CFR 800. So it's actually 3 sections of that federal document that are specifically identified, and they need to be followed.
Right. So I think that those, and again, that initial, when you put those, that will help provide the HPC with understanding where they need to read, what they need to get themselves up. So the questions they ask Mr. Dapper are based on the requirements that he is responsible for. So if we can get those as action items, then the question would be, for me, is will those have passed what you're going to put on, that you and Diane are going to put on the agenda? Will they have passed the legal filter? Will they have been run through the city attorney's office? So we've got some that these follow the rules.
So yes,
Okay.
John has been part of our team on this,
Okay.
making sure that we were prepared for this presentation. Obviously, he was prepared to do part of this presentation as well. So yes, he will be part of that presentation, or at least part of the review for the presentation, even if he's not standing up here. So the answer is yes.
Well, Dr. Zebrand and Seth, I think that this is a significant step forward. Was not very happy last night to learn that we're not going to have that step today, because there's some additional steps that we need to move forward. But we are moving forward, and we will move forward in December. Likely to be some additional questions and some additional comments. But I think that at our January meeting, we should be prepared to be able to look back and review the previous 3 years. I don't think we'll be ready in December. We'll still be in a learning experience. But I think by the January meeting, we would be in a position, we would have a forum, we would understand what we do to go forward. But I don't think a learning experience and then the next agenda item is the past 3 years. I don't think that'll work. It doesn't work for me.
So Mr. Chairman, just to help us draft that agenda item, what would you like the scope of that agenda item to be for December, just to make sure we tee it up correctly to have
The
the right
calendar,
conversation?
the specific guidelines of what we, as an HPC, has to oversee, and that what Mr. Dapper has to report. And it would also be, hopefully we get in advance, the links where we could go. I'll read the CFRs and the settlement agreement. Again, it's 12 pages long. 4 or 5 pages are just signatures. 3 or 4 pages are just a setup. It's the middle 4 pages. And the challenge a bit is you have to read it 2 or 3 times, because there are rehabilitation obligations, post-rehabilitation obligations, and other obligations. And sometimes they overlap and expand a little bit. So the pre-rehabilitation items, and I think that this is what Commissioner Roberts was referring to, there are other requirements that are in there, including a little more clarity on making the building open to the general public a certain number of days. And then the so-called DAPR obligation, which is, or the DAPR covenants. So it would be those three things. Commissioners, what do you think needs to be on the agenda as far as to help you move past this? Any particular? The settlement agreement, to me, should be also, by the way, we don't need all 170 pages on that link. Settlement agreement, the CFRs, a bullet point of the responsibilities of the HPC that Mr. Dapper would be able to, and there's going to be a point that we need to hear what Mr. Dapper's thoughts are on what we have just discussed. And I don't know if there's anything you want to say at this point, or you want to wait until, because you're next up.
I can wait until I'm next up.
Okay. And I think that if there's anything else that the commissioners would like as far as either to understand or know specifically what we need to do, please let myself or Dr. Seabrandt know, and we'll make sure that that is part of the December process.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would ask is, what I'm thinking, I'm thinking about this on the fly, so maybe I'll change my mind later, but if we could go ahead and put the item you just described, we'll put that on there. What I'd like to do, just in case the conversation progresses far enough, go ahead and put an item to make the determination about the exercise of reasonable diligence on the agenda, so it gives you the option to vote if you think we've gotten that far, and if not, we're not on a timeline, but we could then obey that item to January, because if I don't put, if we progress far enough but I don't put that on the agenda, we'll have to come back in January, even if you feel like you've made enough progress in December, but I'll leave that to your discussion.
Two potential items. One
Correct.
is, are you talking about?
Excuse me,
Are you talking about whether Mr. Dapper's been in compliance for this past year, or has Mr. Dapper been in compliance for each of the previous 3 years? Two separate items.
We could do it as two separate items. Sure, yeah, we could do that as two different votes, one for the catch up to this year and one for this year alone. We could do them all as one item.
I think that has some issues. For example, we haven't had the city, excuse the language, the city has not lived up to its responsibilities in doing the two inspections a year. I would need to understand whether or not Mr. Dapper in each of those years has fulfilled each of those obligations that we're going to learn about on December. So I would suggest putting it as separate items, and I also suggest the reality is it may be obeyed until January.
So then okay, we can do that. I think then it would be three items. It would be the overview item. That's the first item with the
Right.
components that we'll work with John to bring back to you. And then the second two, or the 2 and 3 would be the compliance for years prior to this, to 2024,
Right.
and then compliance with 2024. And that gives you full flexibility to
Okay.
determine, make those votes or not, depending on what you hear on the first item.
And it would really help if there was the recommendation of staff and the recommendation had some supporting information, rather than just say we recommend approval, because the commission is going to have to go back and review all the quarterly reports, and the overriding question is still the word rehabilitation, and that's a question that Mr. Dapper is going to be asked coming up. Has rehabilitation actually started? And that's a certified question. That's a real fundamental beginning, as opposed to repair and maintenance, which I think we're all clear that he has done. So, all right, Seth, thank you very much.
Thank you,
It was
Mr.
very
Chairman.
helpful to move forward, and unless there's additional thoughts or comments, hearing none, thank you. So the question is, what do we do with the item that's action item, well, to report? It's not an action item, so we don't need to obey it. We don't need to do anything with it.
It's just a report, it's not an action item.
Yeah, so we don't have to do anything with it. All right. Move on to agenda item 7, HPC 24-0537, 35, 24-0535, HPC 1, quarterly report by Jay Dapper, principal of Dapper Companies, representing the owners of the historic Huntridge Theater, located at 1208 East Charleston. Just as an FYI, the Huntridge did in fact celebrate its 80th birthday this past week. And of course, it's been several decades since it's actually been open, which is a real challenge. The opening movie was at 7 p.m. was Hell's a Poppin', and it cost 44 cents if you were an adult, 30 cents if you were a student or a member of the military, and if you were under 12, it was 14 cents. So those are the little tidbits. Dr. Seabrant, you want to introduce?
Seabrant, for the record, this is the last quarterly report for the year 2024 from regarding the Huntridge Theater.
Welcome. And for the record?
Jay Dapper.
Okay.
Nice to see everybody. Thank you for your time.
So you're going to have to get real close to the microphone.
Yeah, I know. So appreciate everybody's time today. Here to give you an update, the quarterly report. Certainly like to address and answer some of the questions or things that have been talked about today. So first off, I'll just start with the report that staff presented today earlier. I'm fine with that calendar that was put up on the screen. Both with, the additional reports and then the on-site inspections. Although they haven't been official, there has been several instances where members of city staff have visited the Huntridge. When we did our sign lighting event, we had a numerous amount of people there from the city that, attended the event and that were there ahead of the event to make sure that, the facility was safe and all the things that we needed to do were done. And then over the last couple of years, we've had different people that we've met out at the property, from council people to Dr. Seabrant, and then, others. And then we also have met with code enforcement. When there was a code enforcement violation that was turned in, we went all the way through the building, and they didn't have any comments or further things that they had concerns with. So I don't have the person's name, that was actually conducted that walkthrough, but I know that it's probably somewhere in the, the city records of, who came out and
Okay.
reviewed things. So. So as far as the schedule for 2025, I'm in agreement with that and look forward to the inspections and then, the further quarterly reports. And then I also, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address the question that you asked, on the previous item, which was, has rehabilitation started? And I would absolutely say yes. We, have been working diligently on entitlements, plans, approvals at the HPC, the grants through the National Park Service that we received approvals on in June, and now permitting. And so, all of those things take, normally on a regular project, take, a significant amount of time. On a project that is on the National Historic Register and, has the complexity of, a building like this, it takes longer. And so I would love to be under construction today, but there have been things that have set us back. One of the things that you mentioned today, which I can absolutely give you an update on. And then I also want to speak to just a couple of the comments that were made. And, from the last meeting to this meeting, I was able to verify a few things. So When we repaired the sign, the neon that was on the top of the Huntridge sign, it wasn't replaced. The tubing that was there when I bought the building is still there today. Yesco verified that. And, you know, I asked if they would be willing to write a report as such. They said that they would be willing to do that. And I also talked to them about whether or not, because I've got quite a few properties around town, and, you know, we have Yesco and other sign companies like them that go and repair signs, just like, you know, the Huntridge Shopping Center across the street. And I asked them if they regularly obtain permits, you know, to go repair signs. And I don't believe that that is something that they do. And so in this case, you know, there was a question about a permit to, you know, was a permit obtained to repair the sign? And, you know, basically Yesco said that, you know, if they went and obtained permits to repair signs, that's all they would be doing, because that's all they do all day. So as far as the update goes, our architectural firm is at about 90 or 95% complete on our set of plans. And now that set of plans has us building a new lobby in the area where there is a cell tower currently. The cell tower that we have, it's owned by by AT&T, and then it's run by a company called Crown Castle. And their lease is coming to an end with no more extensions in the next few years. When we first purchased the property, we went to them and talked to them about relocation of the cell tower. And we said that we would even be willing to grant them, you know, a new 10, 15, 20-year lease if they relocated. Initially, they said yes, they would. And then over the period of the last couple of years, they've kind of stopped communicating with us. And then finally, when they came back around and started to talk to us about relocation, they demanded a tremendous amount of money in order to relocate the cell tower. And that's when kind of communications broke down with them. And as you stated, we ended up having to file a lawsuit against them in order to work on trying to relocate the sign to the back corner of the property. We've worked with the city on the relocation, trying to figure out a way for them to go onto something called a cow, or it's basically like a temporary cell tower that's on wheels, and then also permanently relocate it to the back corner of the property. One of the reasons that we're working on the relocation is we applied for historic tax credits. The consultant that we hired brought up the fact that there is, you know, a cell tower that was, you know, built in whatever it was, 2007 or 97. I can't remember when it was built, but that it's adjacent to and very close to the historic building. And luckily that was not something that stopped us from getting the approval for the historic tax credits, but it was something that was of concern of the reviewer that worked on the review at the Park Service of our application for our historic tax credits. Okay. And so if for some reason we are not able to relocate that cell tower, then we would either be forced to change our plans, which that would cause us to come in with an entitlement revision, and then also we would have to go in and turn in a revision to our building plans, or we would have to simply wait for the cell tower lease to expire if we wanted to build the plan that we currently have approved now, and then once the cell tower lease expires, then we can, you know, they would have to remove it, and we could move forward with the plans to build the project as it's been presented and approved now.
With the cell tower, when does the lease, it sounded like the lease was going to expire in a year.
Yeah, so I don't have the exact date, but maybe, do you have that date? So he's going to look for the date. I'm going to say that it's within the next couple of years.
Okay,
It could be
so
like,
the next 2 years. And so you're not able to come to an agreement. Do they have to take the tower down?
well, at the end of the lease, they have to.
Okay.
We've presented them with an offer to just relocate the cell tower to the back corner of the property.
Okay.
Working with the city in making sure that it meets all the proper setback requirements. We also had to work with the NV Energy because we have a power pole that the cell tower would be kind of close to. So we worked with them as well.
But if you can't reach an agreement, they have to take the tower down.
Well, yeah, at the end of the 2 years, they have to. Yeah, so their lease was like, let's say it was a 30-year lease.
Okay.
Or maybe it was a 20-year lease with options, and it runs out in the next 2 years or so.
But this is also, the second part of the question, this is also a revenue stream for the Dapper company, correct?
So it's a very small amount of money. I think they pay something like maybe $800 or $900 a month. So, I've already said to them, if you want to just leave, you can do that. We also offered to buy out their lease or, give them the remainder value of their lease. They weren't interested in doing that. They seem like they want to stay, but they just don't want to move.
So is there any other benefit to Dapper and Company or to the Hunter site to have them stay there? Is there any beyond?
No, I mean, I guess, $1,000 a month is not gonna, make a big difference. And, the deal that we offered them to relocate, I mean, we offered to relocate them at the same rent that they were paying, although people are paying a lot more than that now. I just think it's a matter of, it's a pretty big company, AT&T is, big company. And unfortunately, they don't seem to, when I say care a lot about the hunterage, I don't think they really understand what it is or why it's important. And we've just been dealing with people in a different state that, are just big corporate people that just don't seem to care. So
the question, I guess, for this group is, in your mind, when do you think you have to make a decision on changing the existing plans?
Well, I'm hoping that I don't have to because the court case that we have is pretty strong. And just to, go into that just a little bit. So there's a requirement that exists through, the law that says that if a property is on the National Historic Register, they have to have an environmental impact report when they installed the cell tower. And the crux of this whole thing is that we've asked them to provide that to us, and we don't believe that it was ever obtained. And because it was never obtained, it means that they're in breach of the lease because their lease requires them to have all necessary permits. And so in the lawsuit, we've previously asked them for that. Initially, they said they had the environmental impact report. Then they said they didn't have it, and then they said it was not required, but we know that it is required. And so at this point, what will happen is we will end up, they will have to prove that they either have it, or if they don't have it, it will likely be what allows me to get them to move.
So if you could kind of refocus and come back to the presentation by Dr. Seabrand and Seth is for what we're going to do in December. Are there any questions that you have or comments about that so we're kind of get on the same page between now and December?
No, you're saying in December
to get an action plan for the
Yeah.
quarterly reports and then the annual compliance report?
Yeah, no, I don't think I have any questions. In fact, I noticed when that was put up on the screen, so all the items that were very specific that were listed were actually a part of our application for our historic tax credits.
Right.
And when our historic tax credits were approved through the Park Service, that they verified that we were in compliance with those items, or they wouldn't have approved our historic tax credit package. And so, I believe that everything that's in that list of things, we have absolutely no issue with complying with those items. We feel that we are already in compliance, and we would be happy that if what you guys put on it mirrors what those requirements are, that would be fine with me.
And reading that, it was interesting to see that in March of 2023 that you already had a 50% construction plan in place that was part of the package that went to the National Park Service. And so the question is, where do we stand on the tax incentive? Are you going to cover that in your report?
Well, they approved that in June. When you say cover it, you
What's the
mean,
next step in, where do you stand in the tax credit? You haven't,
Well,
the Mob Museum went through that whole process of
Yeah.
tax credits, and it's not just simple as the Park Service. People have to buy the tax, there's a whole process.
yeah, well, yeah, there is a whole process. So I can't tell you today exactly where we stand. I mean,
Okay.
there's nothing else for us to do other than get our permits, get our construction costs. Part of the tax credits that you get, the historic tax credits, require you to get a budget that is approved, and you kind of go through this process. So right now, we don't have a set of approved permits, and so we can't send that out to price the job, which would be the next step. In addition to the historic tax credits, there's several other types of incentives that we're seeking, both public grants and things of that nature, and then also private. Our tenant at the Huntridge is Soho Playhouse. And Soho Playhouse is a nonprofit. And so the rent that they're paying is, the type of rent that a nonprofit would pay, which means, the project doesn't pencil in a traditional way. I can't go to a bank and say, I've got this lease, finance this deal. And so it requires us to get different types of incentives like historic tax credits. We had an application in for a Centennial grant, and we needed to revise it, which we will be resubmitting our Centennial grant application very soon. We've also been working with the city for some other different types of programs like a TID. And then we've got quite a few private donors that are going to be donating money towards the project. Some of which are naming rights, and they're contributing money for very specific things in the project. Some going directly to the Soho Playhouse so that they have the dollars in order to be able to do the project, and then some that are going to go directly for the rehabilitation of the project.
It's a long discussion, but I'd let you go ahead with your presentation for today's report. Thank you.
Well, yeah, so I mean, as far as the report goes, I think that, I kind of, I breezed through everything. The only thing that I would say that I haven't really talked about that's in the report, so we talked about, this is just basic information about the property and information about the Soho Playhouse. Now, I've given this update in the past, but I'll give it again. So we have a lease signed with the Soho Playhouse, and that's to occupy the historic Huntridge Theater, and then the two theaters that we would be building in the back. One would be a black box theater, and one would be a cabaret theater. The cell tower that is currently there basically falls right in the middle of the new lobby that connects the old theater and the new theaters. And you don't see the cell tower in this rendering because we assume that it was already going to be moved at that point, so it's not rendered in there, but it would be right at the back of the property. And then we also signed a lease with a group called Bar Central, which I'm pretty sure that I've talked about them before. Local architecture firm is working with them to do the TI plans, and those are also at about 85 or 90%, and we plan to turn those into the city of Las Vegas soon for permitting. And then the last space to be leased, which is the front space, it says to be leased. We are in talks with several different tenants for that space, but we don't currently have a lease signed on that space. We talked about the cell tower relocation. This is actually a pretty good picture of the cell tower, how ugly it is, and how and why we want to relocate it. That cell tower sits about 15 feet from the actual back wall of the theater itself. There is a enclosure that's around it, and the actual cell tower itself, so we have a relocation plan that that would put this cell tower in the very back corner adjacent to the Resco building. Okay? This is the roadmap or the schedule that was presented. We presented it in a slightly different way, which, again, we're fine with what was presented, so I'm in agreement with that. And then this is our timeline, and this timeline is definitely contingent upon, the cell tower and what happens with that. But you can see that the permitting process runs through Q2 of 2025. There is a chance that we can get permits before that. And the permits are not necessarily held up by the cell tower. I could get a permit to build the building and the project, but obviously I can't build a lobby if there's a cell tower in the way. So just by means of the fact that it's currently sitting in the footprint of the new lobby, that would be an issue. The private financing and the public financing are basically, two different parts. The private financing consists of both private donations that come in from, people who are wanting to contribute to the project, local foundations and people who, want to see the project revived. And then it also references the construction loan that we'll get. We currently have a loan with Meadows Bank, who's been our partner on quite a few projects in downtown. They just recently refinanced the Huntridge Shopping Center that's across the street, and they have a pretty big commitment to this project. Although I don't have a term sheet from them to do the construction financing because I don't have a full budget, I believe that there's a very good chance that Meadows will be our construction lender for the project.
What's Excite or Excite?
Excite?
A loan company that?
Ignite?
Ignite, excuse me, yeah, Excite, Ignite. They still have a relationship with you?
Yes, yeah, they're actually doing the financing for Mission Linen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they have your name, and it's kind of an outdated story that they have about the Huntridge and so forth. But this is not the Meadows. They're not connected to the Meadows.
No, so Ignite was my original lender when I first bought the Huntridge, and then Meadows refinanced them.
Gotcha.
And the reason why that, so Meadows is more of a traditional bank, and like I said, I mean, they've financed all the construction of the Huntridge Shopping Center across the street. So although, when I say I don't have a term sheet from them, I feel pretty confident that they will be our lender for this project, but, it's a little premature to say, that I'm positive of that. And then the public financing part, is really what amounts to items like our, historic tax credits, centennial grants, and other things. All that process takes time, and, we don't know exactly how much time it takes. Each one of those applications is different. When you get those monies is different. So we're saying that runs through, when we would hope to start construction, which is Q2 of next year. And then you can see you've got the cell tower relocation. So right now we're, basically between Q3 and Q4 of 2024. We're hoping that we have this resolved by, the start of the year, and then construction could commence after that.
The last question I had is you said your final product would be, quote, a beautifully renovated theater that is reminiscent of its iconic past. It sounds like that's still a fundamental element of your plan?
Yes, absolutely.
And as far as public-private, you mentioned the dollar figure a couple, 3 years ago, $14 million. The world has changed. What do you see? And are we talking about the historic Huntridge Theater or the full project?
Yeah, we think the total project cost is probably somewhere closer between 20 to 25 million.
Okay.
And that's for the whole project. Part of that is core and shell rehabilitation, and then part of that is tenant improvement. So you have 3 distinct, separate tenant improvements going on. You have the Huntridge Theater, and then the new spaces that we would create that the Soho Playhouse would occupy. And then you have Park Central in the back, that's another TI. And then up front, the last space, which is something that we're calling a brewery or a distillery space.
And the last question is the breakdown between the private financing and public financing. Do you have a a goal in mind that one's going to be 30% or 50/50 or?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, next time, I'd be happy to share that with you,
Okay.
a breakdown of our capital stack. It's not 50/50, it's a kind of a stacked, so like, a project like this, I can expect to get debt of somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million of debt.
Okay.
And then we have equity in the deal already, and then we continue to put equity in the deal. And then the gap between our equity and the debt is where we need the incentives.
Do you see any city bond money coming your way next year for this project?
I don't know, do you know of any bond money that I could go access?
Oh, I think that
To be very honest with you, I'm just trying to I haven't really had any projects that I've done in the past that have received anything other than like a VIP grant or an OPA. And so navigating these waters is new to me. And, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, I never knew what a historic tax credit
Gotcha.
was.
Okay.
And so we're just learning as we go, and I'm open to any advice you have.
All right. Questions, comments, thoughts, Commission, about the quarterly report or what's going on in... With that, Mr. Dapper, thank you very much. We look forward to the December meeting, and we look forward to the opening of the 100.
Thank you very much.
Okay. An action item, it was a report. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is HP 24-0537-HPC1, discussion for possible action regarding approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the repairs of an exterior wall, window, and doors of the casita at the historically listed Harrison House located at 1001 F Street. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Dr. Siebert, for the record. So this property is listed on the National Register and, of course, the Las Vegas Register of Historic Places. And there was damage done to the small casita in the back of the original house. This particular building was constructed in 1955, according to records, and a vehicle struck the building, and the applicant is asking for approval to fix the damaged areas, including the wall, window, and door.
Welcome, former commissioner to the HPC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and distinguished body. I'm so sorry it's taking me this long to fix the repairs on this building. It was struck by a vehicle more than a year ago. But the insurance company paid for 3/4 of the damage, and we had a sizable deductible that we had to raise. So we've gotten our complete engineering reports. We have sort of sourced the new windows and doors, and now we're just waiting for a certificate of appropriateness. We have a construction company in place, and we plan to put everything back exactly how it was.
I forgot to formally identify yourself for the record.
I'm sorry, I'm Catherine Duncan, a former Historic Preservation Commissioner.
And your connection with the Harrison House.
I'm the property owner, sir.
Great, thank you. And this is, staff is recommending approval, Commission, Dr. Seabrand?
Correct, we are recommending approval. The applicant did show us the doors and windows that are in your backup that will be replaced, and they are deemed appropriate. This particular building is actually not visible from the public right-of-way, but we did want to bring this to the commission because this is a very important property.
Questions, comments? Please.
Commissioner Roberts, did we discuss how did the damage happen? I guess I'll just ask it directly.
It was a vehicle that was attempting to park itself in the back, and the brakes went out.
Oh, geez, okay. Are there any concerns about that happening again and possibly implementing like some bollards or some other safety measures to keep it from happening again?
No, sir, this particular casita sits behind a iron gate.
Okay,
So long as the gate's closed, it doesn't have any traffic coming in and out. This was a very peculiar incident, and we will not be inviting that particular person to the house again with that vehicle.
fair enough. I appreciate that. In the, one more question, in the backup, I saw, I think I saw what was the windows. Do they have like an X pattern in their mullions or muntings, rather? Is that correct?
The suggested replacement windows do, yes.
Okay. And they look to be of the period. How did you find them?
Well, my sister likes to shop, and there's this shopping site called Etsy,
Sure.
and so she went there and she was able to find the, what she thought would be appropriate for that era.
Sure. I thought they were very interesting looking windows. I liked them personally, but they don't match these ones, and I don't, so I just wanted to, I don't know if these are replaced or if these are original, and the new windows from Etsy or whatever would be going back to the original design, or?
So what you're seeing in the picture is what's there now,
Okay.
and they're broken.
And are those the
And
original?
so
sorry.
what she's recommending is that we replace those two windows with the new windows.
Okay. And the windows that are shown here, are those the original windows to the building?
The ones in the picture that I'm looking at are original windows, yes.
Okay. But the new windows don't, they don't match those?
They don't match, but they're still from the same 1942 era, so we thought that they may possibly pass your inspection since they are from the same era.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
All right, I look for a motion.
Commissioner Perdue, so moves.
We have a motion. Further discussion by the commission?
Excuse me, is that move for approval?
General public? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Thank you,
Motion carries
thank you so
unanimously.
much. Thank you.
Look forward to a photograph when it's all done and repaired.
And if it would be appropriate, on December 7th and 8th, we'll be having an event at the house that'll be open to the public, so please mark your calendars. It's going to be the 82nd anniversary of the Harrison House.
And will the windows be done by then?
If we get the permit, because I think after this stage, we still have to get the permit.
Okay.
And it's also Sammy Davis Jr.'s birthday, December 8th, so we'll be celebrating his birthday that weekend.
Okay, thank you.
All right? Thank you so much. Okay.
Agenda item number 9, 24-0538, HPC 1, final report by the owners of the Christensen House located at 500 West Van Buren Avenue regarding the completion of the restoration of the historic windows. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Seabrant, for the record. And this is one of our most recently listed properties on the Historic Register, both national and local. And the applicant came in for a grant to our bricks and mortar grant to repair the windows. And they have been repaired, and she is here to give the final report as required per the grant guidelines.
Welcome. Please, for the record, identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Giulio Chigrosso, and I'm here to report that we had both windows repaired. We are very pleased with the work by Kent's Glass, which was a company that attended, I guess, the city's seminar on restoration of historic homes. And so they came, one person came and repaired the windows. They were very thorough. This big main window was brought down in the outside to the original wood. It was reglazed where it needed reglazing, and then there was extra wood that was added as a reinforcement. I don't know if you have any more of the photos that I thought but would show that, but maybe not. So we were very pleased with it. And then the window by the chimney was, it had it was the original window, and they restored it with adding some reinforcements and basically gluing it together, and it looks pretty good. So that's the report.
Great. Questions, comments? Other than we're able to do a little bit of research to the name. It goes all the way back to 1823 in Denmark, where a Mr. Christensen with an E married Ellen Christensen with an O. And so the E stuck, and so now we have Christensen House with an E. So that's a great, having had an opportunity to visit it, just, it's in great shape, and it just, you go touch it and you're taken back to the time, to the people that built it and the Las Vegas community, and the decision on the architecture is a wonderful story, and of course, made even more wonderful by your work in preserving it. So from the commission's standpoint, thank you for all the work that you have done. And the plaque was placed at the Christensen House. So if there are any last thoughts or comments, we appreciate all your work.
Oh, I appreciate your work as well, so thank you.
Okay. Move on to agenda item 10, 24-0546-HPC1, report by Nathan Harper. This item is going to be held in abeyance. Mr. Harper, at the last minute, had another challenge. He was looking forward to presenting this report. Do we need an abeyance motion, or is this just a report, I think? The report only, so no action is required.
Seaman, for the record, yes, I'm being advised that we do need an abeyance for this item. And it would be obeyed to the December 11th meeting.
Oh, we do need an action item? No.
Just a motion for abeyance.
Okay. Look for a motion to obey it until, well, then we should have obeyed the first one. Well, okay, all right.
Commissioner Laramie, I make a motion to obey to our December 11th meeting.
All right, we have a motion, discussion. There's no general public. We have nobody on the telephone. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor.
And Mr. Chairman, Seth Floyd for the record, so just so nobody loses any sleep over the first item, you did the right thing because you did actually hear the report, so you didn't need to take any action even though there's going to be a future agenda item. So you did the right thing on both items.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 11, 24-0539-HPC1, report by the Community Development Department regarding creation of guidelines and procedures for nominations of the annual Excellent in Historic Preservation Award Program. This is something the Commission was looking forward to update, review its award for excellence that it started many years ago, back in 2005. And we have the following categories, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Zebrandt and staff to take us through this, please.
Thank you, Seabrant, for the record. So after a discussion at our last meeting, as far as how to move forward with these annual award nominations, so what you're looking at right now is the old form, and this is apparently what's been in, this was in place when I started. I'm not sure who made this one, but this is what the commission had been using. We haven't altered it drastically, but after the discussion, like I said, from our last meeting, we did change it just a little bit. The overview is in that first paragraph. The award categories was decided to keep everything, but to add a couple. So we did add the City of Las Vegas Legacy Business Award, as well as the Historical Media Project. And the requirements, as was suggested from the feedback from the commissioners, as far as writing a required summary statement describing why the individual or place is worthy of an award and with the 250-word maximum. And then there was also discussion on how it was decided to award these awards to different individuals or organizations. So I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this first page is the overview, and then the second page is, again, it's very similar to the original form. It's just been updated a little bit with a bit more information that is required, along with the new categories. And then again, there was the discussion of how it's decided to nominate somebody. And this is just an example of what we use in the city when we have proposals that have been submitted through an RFP process for anybody in the city. As far as it's an anonymous voting. Usually we have in our committees that do these for RFPs, at least 4 people. It can be as every commissioner can do this, or if we just pick a few commissioners to be on a committee. Again, it's up to the commission of what they would like to do. And again, these are examples. It's just an idea. These can be changed. These are just what we came up with. Section 1 would be writing the strengths and weaknesses for the relevance to historic preservation. That would be, why is this person relevant, or is this project relevant, or the organization relative? That would be a 10-point, and it would be, again, an individual decision of how important you feel that project or person is, and you would give it anywhere between 0 to 10 points. The section 2 would be what would be the impact on community awareness of historic preservation, because a large part of our initiative and our mission is to spread awareness about historic preservation. And again, writing down the strengths and weaknesses, again, another 10 points possible. And then the last one, the same strengths and weaknesses with 10 points possible, and that would be for the long-term sustainability related to historic preservation. So that would be if there is an award given to an organization, are they going to continue in the years moving forward to do more projects, more robust projects, or is this person that is getting the award, are they moving forward in their career, or do they have things in place that they will be doing in the future? And again, because sustainability is one of the items and objects that we look at to ensure historic preservation, then total up the points, have a total points scored, then all these forms would be submitted back to staff, and then we would tally up all of the finals points, and whoever has the highest points would be given the award. Now, this is not required, this is just an idea, because there were comments that there should be a way to grade these, but happy to take any feedback if somebody else has a different idea how this could be done, or if this is even needed. Thank you.
Couple things at a time. One would be, let's go back to the first, and that's the added categories. And within that, there are 2 elements. One is, while this is not an action item, we do need to make it an action item at our next meeting, but this is the first award categories. The second part of this discussion will be something that Dr. Seabrant mentioned to me this morning regarding Colleen, and that would be an additional category. So the first part is everybody accepting and okay with the list that's on the Dorothy Wright preservation, advocacy, career achievement, City of Las Vegas, legacy business, historic media? Anything on there that we don't like, we want to take off, or is there anything that we want to add at this juncture? Please.
Commissioner Laramie, I think the only thing I would add under Dorothy Wright bricks and mortar, to kind of be compatible with how we've awarded some projects in the past, which I think is appropriate, is adaptive reuse.
Okay.
Because I think historic rehabilitation is probably a little more strict, if you will, than just pure adaptive reuse. That's not coming through the commission because it's not a designated property.
Great, okay.
Statement for the record, I'm sorry, Chair, I did actually fail to mention that we had a conversation this morning about adding an archaeology category in honor of Commissioner Beck. The only thing is, there's not a lot of archaeology going on in Las Vegas, but it would be nice to have that category, because it could even be related to perhaps field schools, archaeologists that are professors in the university. So if anybody has any ideas about that, please let me know, because like I said, it's not like we have a lot of digs going on in the city limits of Las Vegas.
And the idea there is recognition, as with Dorothy, is the contributions that Colleen has made. And I don't think they're all necessarily archaeological, but certainly a major part of that. Does anybody have any other thoughts? Commissioner Roberts?
Commissioner Roberts, archaeology is listed under career achievement. I don't know if that would suffice. Otherwise, could it be added to preservation education?
Well, I don't think, we don't want to add anything. We want to make an entire category in honor of Commissioner Beck. So it would be a new category.
Right, but I think what the commissioner was saying, under career achievements, we already have archaeology, that maybe we could take it off of that listing and just use the one for Colleen, right? Okay.
And this is Commissioner Laramie again. Perhaps there's a way to expand that, and forgive my ignorance a little, as I'm not super familiar with the field of archaeology, but could we expand it to be inclusive of, prehistoric and indigenous history, and maybe make it a bit broader of a category of the historic period that archaeology is usually covering, because people are publishing books, and, museums are still creating content related to that
That's a good idea.
history,
We could
so-
do archaeology, paleontology, and indigenous ethnography.
So, yeah, I think something that's a little more broad, but still within relationship to
And that would
Commissioner Beck would be
yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah. All right, I think with those, if we can just add that category with a more definition, and then the next question was the decision on who can make nominations.
The consensus was anybody can.
Okay, are we all comfortable with that? Because we're going to embed this to some degree with an action item in December. And the answer is yes. I see we all in agreement with that. And then the question that you had was I think it's very helpful back to where the requirement is with 250 words in that area. That makes it, rather than just I like the person, maybe make it a little stronger, put it up at the top, what is it? Yeah, the narrative statement, or make it a little bolder. But anyway, I think that helps a lot. And then the next one is the grading worksheet. Somehow the word weakness doesn't turn me on. Back to the 60s word there. Does anybody have any experience that would be, or is this satisfactory? If it is, we'll move forward. What we're simply looking at is to formalize the process a bit as to whether the nomination really, the person fits this category, or do we need it at all?
It's a discussion, so if the commission doesn't feel that it's needed, that's fine. It was just when we put the survey out, there was a couple comments of how to grade these, and this was just an idea.
The question that is here is generally, we get all the nominations, and then in public, we vote on them. And was there a consensus of how many people we would allow to be in each category?
That one was split for everybody who was nominated gets an award, or that only one award would be awarded per category. But it was a split decision, so again, it's up to the commission of what you would like to do.
Okay, so we're going to start at this end. Should we have one, or anybody that's nominated gets an award?
One.
One, all right. Next to you,
One.
Michelle?
Either one or an evaluation kind of grading worksheet.
One.
Just to add to that, I just think it could get diluted in the sense of, like, I think the award should have more prestige and not just be like everybody gets it as soon as you save something. That's my opinion.
Hollis?
Excuse me, your mic, please?
I like the categories, but some of them do seem to overlap, and so I wonder about the longevity of the program if we have so many categories and maybe a fairly small potential applicant pool for these year after year.
Or we can think about it another way. If there's nobody in that year, then nobody gets the award.
Okay, yeah, that's,
Jack, your thoughts?
If there's more than one nominee for any category, we should be doing an evaluation and voting on it.
Okay.
That's what I think we should do. And if there's only one, we should actually evaluate it anyway.
Excuse me, is your mic on?
Somebody could, I'm sorry. Yeah, because all right. Yeah, because sometimes I don't know that we've ever turned anybody down that's been nominated ever. And yet there's other periods of time where there were we really struggled to even come up with nominees. So I don't think there's a problem with having an evaluation sheet, but even if there's only one nominee, okay, then maybe we might not use it. But if there's more than one nominee and we're only going to give one, then we need to have an evaluation.
And Stephen, for the record, if this is the direction you would like to move, then the discussion needs to be, are you doing this in a public meeting where
Right.
there are 3 people nominated for one category?
Okay,
And you
you're-
vote on them in a public forum, or do you do the evaluation anonymously? Can we, is that okay, Paul?
You're a step ahead.
Yeah,
You're a
okay.
step ahead. So I think the consensus that I had is that we want one. On the other hand, if we go to what you're going to talk about, there's a potential for a tie. And so the goal is one winner, but there could be an evaluation to where it was close enough, and then we get, let's say one winner. Let's go to your second question is, how do we get to that? Is that at a public meeting, or is there a committee, and then is that committee a working committee or a?
What we would do, sorry, Stephen, for the record, what we would do, and Paul, jump in here if this is not appropriate, because what we do in the city is it's anonymous. So these sheets would be sent to the commissioners, and then we would have a reciprocal of you to submit them electronically, anonymously, and then we as staff would tally the votes, and that would tell us who the winners are. So it wouldn't be a working group, it would just be everybody's doing it anonymously. Is that allowable?
Paul Mata for the record. Yes, you could have a vote that's anonymous.
So how does that sound? That we get all the nominations and then we send in our vote and we use this sheet?
If everybody agrees on this sheet, and the way this sheet works, how you would grade this is you would receive the nomination with that 250-word narrative that explains why this
Right.
entity is worthy of the nomination, and then you'd look at it and say, okay, well, this person has nothing to do with historic preservation. That would be a weakness. A strength would be nothing because they have nothing to do with historic preservation. That's basically how it works.
So what we have is the categories we have expanded, plus we're going to expand one more for the Colleen Beck and the description. Number 2 is our goal is 1 winner. 3 is we will use this form for each of the candidates, and then we will submit our votes to Dr. Seabrandt, and they will be anonymous in the sense that she'll know where the email came from, but they will be, and then they will be calculated and then supplied to the commission. Please, Jack.
I was just curious, is the new category for archaeology and paleontology, is that being named after Colleen, or is that for her to be the first winner?
Well, no, yes, we would nominate, that would be named after Colleen, yes.
Okay, all right.
So those are the, any other thoughts, comments? If not, we'll move on, and if we can put that into an action item for our December meeting, and then we move on?
We can do that, but just the one last question. I'm sorry, was it Commissioner Gillespie that mentioned this, or Commissioner Roberts? Sorry, I don't remember, even though that was like 5 minutes ago. Of rewording some of these categories. If that's the case, then please send us what you suggest, and that would have to be part of the vote on our December meeting.
Okay, Daniel, I think you had 1 or 2 thoughts on that.
The only comment I made was in regards to the term archaeology, because it was already existing there, so it could either be relocated or removed, but I don't have any specific.
Okay. Beyond the duplication of the archaeology, I don't think there was any, so that's great. Thank you for all the work on that. Another question, comment?
Yeah,
Please.
Commissioner Laramie. So I just wanted to, I guess, put this idea out there, which is somewhat similar, I think, to the MUDA awards, but in thinking about, I think there was agreement from the commission that we wanted to continue the awards lunch. And so if we do have multiple nominations, would we want to invite all nominees to the presentation and the lunch, even though there's still just one winner, but it's still kind of a, thank you, like even though you didn't win, we'd still love to invite you to this lunch for doing good work, type thing.
I've got uncomfortable with that. You're the winner, the rest of you are losers, but we like you anyway.
That's what happens at the Academy Awards.
Do we, the question is, do we want to invite them here and open up the Oscar and say,
It's up to the commission. I know what Vice Chair Laramie is referring to as the MUDA Awards, and everybody that's nominated gets invited to a dinner. Sorry, if Mike could explain that, please.
Well, for the record, Michael Howe, probably in a parallel universe, we try to celebrate the community. So it doesn't hurt to word it better, feed the losers and shake hands with the winner.
I guess I'm also just thinking, potentially, as we've talked about, we may have less awards, obviously. So do we want to continue a lunch then if we're only going to have 2 or 3 awardees? Unless we're inviting everyone to the table, which I think is still a nice, as Mike said, kind of community building, preservation building activity, but I'm trying to understand how the lunch works now in the new system.
Well, saving for the record, so the luncheon, all past award winners are invited.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's not just going to be 2 people and us.
Okay.
It's what is it, usually 50 people, 80 people, something like that? So we invite all of the past award winners plus the people that will or be nominated for that year's awards.
And we can formalize the luncheon a little bit, maybe just have a particular person have a topic to speak about. I mean, I think that the idea for luncheon is great, but it needs to be a little bit more potentially formalized. But yeah, the past invitees it makes it, everybody gets to chat, and not everybody attends, but all right, let's make that an action item for the for the next meeting. I'll move on to the next one, which is agenda item 12, 24-0540-HPC1. Discussion of possible action regarding approval of the final updated historic West Side School designation to the National Register of Historic Places. Unfortunately, the person that prepared this, the company prepared that, is unable to be here. The process is it goes from us to SHPO and to the Nevada State Museum and Historical Board at their next meeting at the end of this year, and SHPO could make some changes, the museum board can make some changes, and generally if they're not substantial, they go back to the keeper. If there is something major that we've approved that turns out was inaccurate, or they make changes, it could very well come back to us. Were there any comments or thoughts on the West Side School presentation? Very important document, and in my opinion, needs to be extremely accurate. I had some challenges with the which I failed to mention, with the backup material. I was confused with that, in that what's listed there is the original nomination in 1978. Then there was a very substantial update in 2015. That's not included in the packet. However, some of the photographs apparently are listed. And then the additional documentation that was done this year, that's in there twice. And so the last, so I was wondering whether or not what we send to the keeper actually will include the 2015 nomination.
Sorry, I thought that was in there. Sorry, Sue Brent, for the record. So we send both because we do need to include the original nominations and any updates. And I'm sorry, I thought that the 2015 was in here. I'm looking through it now. And then we also do send it separately, the new nomination, so that they don't have to dig through
right.
Everything to find it. So they will both be sent.
Well, what's on the board packet is 1978, additional documents from 2014, and then the additional documents, additional document 2015, and then the additional documents from this year. Those photographs are repeated in there twice, so I think that's what's in the back of it. That can just be fixed, but the answer to my question is, will we be sending the 2015? And the answer you said is yes.
Yes.
Okay. So here's my concerns with the, and I'll make this very brief. This is the West Side School and has such a tremendous history, as does that community, that segment, that part of our town, that this document needs to stand out and to be accurate. I will go to a small nitpicker at the end, which on page 9, or section 9, page 16, it says, quote, "The first permanent school was located in the Salt Lake Hotel." That's not correct. It was never located in a hotel. And it's those kinds of things that will go on the national website and just fit right into the negative stereotype of Las Vegas that our first school was in a hotel. It wasn't. What it was in was they bought a building that was located at the corner, the northeast corner of Main and Fremont. and they took it over to Second Street, they cut it in half, they gutted it, they took the roof off, put a new roof on, and they converted the building that at one point had been temporarily a hotel. But the school was never in a hotel. So that just needs to be cleaned up. It's a minor point in one sense, but we don't need a record that says our first school was located in a hotel. My biggest issue is, which is important to me and I think to the community, is the west side of the town. Its name, the history of its name is so important. And this document convolutes it all over the place. The place opened in 1905, not 1904. It opened in 1905. And it was called legally the original Las Vegas town site. That's what it's still called in deeds. And then about 2 months later, because it was all tents waiting to move into the into the Clark Railroad side, the railroad started in, by the way, the railroad, Senator Clark, he owned a Salt Lake newspaper, and he started denigrating the McWilliamstown site, started calling it Ragtown. The minute that the railroad opened up its website, its town site on May 15th that we celebrate, the newspaper started calling the railroad town the new town, and they started calling McWilliamstown site the old town, lowercase. Within a couple of months, the community in Old Town adopted that name, and it became uppercase Old Town, and it was referred to Old Town for the next 20 years, the next couple of decades, and that was the original name of the school, the Old Town School. So that sequence of events is important, and that needs to be in this document, and it's not corrected in this document. It's all over the place and that's one of the reasons why we paid them, is to clean that up. So that needs to be fixed, and I will send these notes to you and ask that if a motion is made to adopt, that the motion is made to adopt with those appropriate changes. Further comments, discussion? Chair can't make a motion, so I look for a motion to approve with the corrections.
Commissioner Surface, I'll make a motion to approve with the noted changes.
We have a motion, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor. Let's move on to agenda item 13, 24-0541-HPC1, discussion for possible action regarding approval of the National Register of Historic Places multiple property documentation form from the Historic Places Associated with Latinos in Nevada. I believe this is our first multiple. No, we had one before. Which one was that?
No, I thought you were going to say this was our first draft, but it's not. But sorry, I got ahead of you.
Oh, okay. The document is in there. It covers the entire state of Nevada, not just Las Vegas. This is not one by the city. This is one by the Department of Transportation, NDOT. I'm not sure why NDOT is particularly involved in Latinos and Nevada's economy, but this is a multiple documentation form. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Seabrand, for the record. So correct, this is a NDOT project. They are doing multiple surveys for road construction and changes in the area, and they were focusing on large parts of East Las Vegas, and they wanted to focus on the Latino community in those areas. So they did have a consultant do the multiple property documentation form, and this would actually be helpful for us in the future if we did want to nominate something specifically associated with the Latin American experience in Las Vegas, and we weren't able to nominate it for individually or for something else, we could tie it to the multiple property documentation form. And SHPO did send this to me, as well as the next item for commission approval.
Further questions on this? If you've had the opportunity, I'm sure that each member has read the form, you realize it's a shorthand version of the Latinos in the community, in the state of Nevada, often feels a bit more like an editorial than a nomination. That said, look for a motion, one way or the other.
This is Commissioner Laramie. I just have a quick question. Chair Stallo, you just passed us what looks like notes.
This is for the following item.
This is for the next item. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Laramie, I'll make a motion to approve.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor. Next item is agenda item 1424-0542-HPC1, discussion of possible action regarding approval of the Register of Historic Places nomination for the Culinary Workers Union, Local 226, headquarter building located in the city of Las Vegas at 1630 South Commerce Street. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Seabrand, for the record. So this is directly tied with the multiple property documentation form that was submitted. This is also, was part of NDOT's survey, and they did identify and nominated the Culinary Workers Union Local 226 headquarters building. They nominated to the National Register of Historic Places. And again, SHPO did send this to me for HPC review and if approval if deemed appropriate.
Comments, please.
Guys, I know this meeting's going long, but I just wanted to share with everybody, as children, me and my cousin, all of my parents worked for this union. And on Saturday morning, we'd all get dragged down there, and we'd, if you dared enough to go inside, because the smoke was like down to your chest and all the way up to the ceiling, and they would ramble on. 99, it's at the Desert Inn. It'll be guaranteed 2 nights. 99, you want it. 100, it's, take it. The guy goes up, gets his slip, and walks out. But there was this whole entire sort of ecosystem there. So there was people with their trunks up, and they were selling things out of the trunks. We were skateboarding all around, getting into trouble. People were selling the tamales on the street. It was, I have a fond memory of that place in my heart. I spent a lot of time there as a child. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Other thoughts, comments? As a former culinary worker at the Stardust Hotel, I would support a motion to approve, but there are some dramatic changes that need to be made. The Culinary Union represents the restaurant, back of the house, the maids, and what it doesn't represent and has never represented are the dealers. And this nomination spent an inordinate amount of time talking about how Latinos were not allowed to be dealers because, or have a gaming license because the 1931 law said you had to be a citizen of the United States. It doesn't fit with the rest of the narration. All the discussion about casino dealing and gambling games that Latinos were not allowed to have that were not citizens. The fundamental elements of this report seems to work. Their period of significance is at a time that the Latino community was growing, was expanding, and playing a significant role in the leadership of the Culinary Union. But just some of the language early on is nothing to do with the Culinary Union or the particular growth of the Latino community within the culinary union. That, I'm going to recommend that be moved out. A couple of minor points, for example, on page 14 of section 8, it says, after 10 years, the gambling law was passed. El Rancho opened in Las Vegas, becoming the city's first major hotel casino. Well, it's not in the city. And the name of the place was not El Rancho, it was the El Rancho Vegas. Those kinds of things need to be cleaned up, and to make this really go is something that we're going to approve and move to the state, and then move to the to the federal government, and then potentially online. The first, quite frankly, the first multi-story hotel in the city of Las Vegas, of course, was 1932, the Apache Hotel, now the Hotel, the Binion, the Horseshoe. Although, to go back to the Apache, I think, went back to the Apache. And then, quite frankly, a couple of weeks after the El Rancho opened, in the city of Las Vegas, the multi-story hotel El Cortez Casino, Restaurant, and Entertainment Center opened on November 7th, 1941, just a week before the attack on Pearl Harbor. So there needs, and all these play into the culinary union's growth and expansion, not the gaming side. So I would suggest that those things need to be emphasized, the culinary elements to it, and not the gambling side where Latinos, because they weren't citizens, were not allowed to have a license. And the last one is kind of a minor point, but on page 22 of section 8, it says the first citywide strike occurred in both the city of Las Vegas and in the county. And I think we just dropped the word citywide strike simply because it's confusing. It was not citywide. It was in the city and the county. So those are the changes that I would recommend that go with the approval of this nomination. Further comments?
Who wrote this nomination?
This was written by a company called Mead, and they're based in...
It's Mead and Hunt.
Mead and Hunt.
And they have a pretty good list of clients that they have, but they tend not to be in historic area. I mean, they seem to be more in highways, and they did an extensive report on US 40 and so forth, but this just seemed to be a little out of their area. But a responsible company, and I looked at their but so that I would look for a motion with the following corrections.
Commissioner Cosgrove, I make a motion that we accept the nomination with the proposed amendments.
Right, I'll second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor of the amendment. Agenda item 15, HPC 20.
Your mic, please. Excuse me.
We are on 15 though, right?
Yes, we are.
All right. Agenda item 15, 24-0543 HPC1, report by the Community Development regarding the electing Historic Preservation Commission officers. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Seabrand, for the record. So when when I first came here, Clay T. White was the chair, and she resigned due to a very heavy schedule. And at that time, current Chairman Stodel was filling in as for that vacancy, and then at that time, he was the vice chair, and then current Vice Chair Laramie filled in that spot. So normally, we have a vote in January after 2 years. The term has lasted 2 years. We did not do the January vote. We failed to do that. And so after seeking counsel with our legal department, we were advised that now that Chair Stodel and Vice Chair Laramie are in the middle of their second terms, and that those terms will term out in January 2026. So at our January 2026 meeting, we will be nominating a new chair and a new vice chair. So this is just a report only. If there are any questions, our legal counsel will be able to answer those for you as far as if there's any concerns about continuing with the 2 officers that we have.
Hearing and seeing no comments, let's move on to Seth's report. Agenda item 16, Seth Floyd, Director of Community Development Department. Any?
Seaburn for the record. So Director Floyd did have to go to a director's meeting. The only update that he had was that in the next couple of months, we will be sending, well, Teresa will be sending out a survey to all the commissioners to complete. And since we're going to be starting a new year here in a couple months, the questions will be pertaining to moving forward, what types of things that, you know, we're doing that you like, that we're doing well, things that you would like to see done a bit differently. And we don't have those exact questions compiled as of yet, but once you get this survey, please, everybody answer so that we have everybody's input on what we can be doing in 2025.
Great. Questions, comments? All right, then let's move on to the next agenda item, 18.
17.
17.
All right, we'll do 17. A project update report from Dr. Seabrandt. Dr. C. Seabrandt, the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Las Vegas.
Thank you, and Seaburn for the record. So just for our updates, SHPO is now reviewing the Cliff May Home Survey for concurrence on the findings. The Old Mormon Fort National Register update is being edited with the comments and requested revisions from the commission. The contract for writing the historical report for Floydland Park at Tule Springs is currently in production. The commission nominated 1433 Cottonwood Place to our Las Vegas Historic Property Register. That goes to Planning Commission on November 12th, and if the Planning Commission approves it, then it goes to the City Council on December 18th, and that would be its final approval. And after that, of course, we do our little ceremony with the bronze plaque, which would be sometime in January or February. The Huntridge neighborhood signs, we are waiting for the hardware that was ordered by our Public Works in order to mount those. And I just had an update last week, and they are still waiting. As soon as that's done, we will hang them, and we'll do a little social media blitz on that. This was a question from the report from the original Las Vegas High School. There was a question about the roof. As you can see, the before and after images that they sent to me of the repairs and replacement that was done, this roof is not visible from the public right-of-way anywhere. It's only visible from an aerial. So this would be appropriate for the school. Our future agenda items, will do a short discussion about conservation districts at our December meeting. Still looking for any ideas about something for the Old Spanish Trail. I know that the exhibit at the State Museum will be opening soon, and maybe we can get some ideas from that. as well as just some other pending items. El Dorado Days Parade 2025. So nobody has contacted us to say they are interested. I think in memory of Commissioner Beck's participation last week, everybody should make an effort to please participate. We need some float ideas. All we have right now is that banner that you're looking at. So please try and think of something that we can do. We want to be an entry in the parade. It's going to come up on us quickly, so please get with myself or Teresa via email as soon as possible. For those that are attending the Pass Forward conference next week, if you make sure you have all your hotels, flights, tours. If you have any questions, get with Teresa, and she will be able to sort out any problems you may have, and we'll just meet everybody at the terminal at the airport on Sunday morning. Remember, there is no November meeting. We never have a November meeting, so don't come here in November. December 11th is our next meeting and our last meeting of 2024, so please do make sure you mark that down. And lastly, in memory of Commissioner Colleen Beck, that's this fantastic picture we have of her in the El Dorado Days Parade, and she was incredibly happy. She was very pleased to be involved, and she loved that so many people were excited about historic preservation. The image in the bottom right, I'm not sure when that was, but it was a while ago. I see that there's some current commissioners in that photo, as well as Colleen. And Colleen brought, and I know Chairman Stodel already covered some of this, but she did really bring not just her smiling face and her great personality to our commission. She was incredibly important to providing us with information about Southwestern archaeology, about the indigenous communities. She was our expert that we turned to. I talked to her often offline about different projects, and she is going to be greatly, greatly missed. I do have a condolence card down here. If nobody signed it, please come get with me before I leave tonight or this afternoon. And sorry, I'm wondering if we can have just a moment of silence in memory of our commissioner who's sadly passed, Colleen Beck.
Please.
Okay, and our thoughts and our hearts are with Colleen Spirit and her family. And that's all I have for updates. Thank you.
Maya, could you flip back a couple slides? Just to, I think it's about 3 reports.
Jeff, can I have that back? So thank you. Which one do you want?
There's the next one, maybe. Is that snow?
No, it's
Spray,
it's
insulation spray.
it's spray foam for the roof. I know it does look like snow, but no, it's not.
So that was all cleaned up, and it really looks like there's a substantial improvement. Dan, can you see any clues or anything that stands out to you?
I would guess that it's a TPO roof. That's about all I can surmise from that.
I mean, a decent one, or?
Oh, yeah, TPO is a very resilient roof. It's not good for heavy traffic, though, so the one thing that I would say is maintenance to any of the, looks like there's a mini split there or something, maintenance to any of that. There should be, or there could be a pathway that is built so that you don't walk on it. I believe that any traffic, if you get up on the roof more than once a year, it's considered high traffic. So that's the only thing that I would see there.
Oh, okay. The good news is, I think from a historic preservation point is, they put a new roof on it, meaning that the building, they hope to keep the building itself. And did they give you any sense about the Florida Duncan excuse me, the Maud Fraser, they were going to repair that roof, but again, if it's not visible, it's not within our jurisdiction.
Correct, if it's not visible from the public right away. And I think that the way this building with the lip there is, you're not going to see anything from the public right away.
The good news is they did follow up with us, and I think that our communication with them and their promises to come back, I think is a real positive. So, great, thank you.
Commissioner Roberts, I had a couple just questions. First and foremost, regarding Commissioner Beck, are there going to be any services that would be open to our attendants?
No, I did speak with her husband, and there will not be any services or memorials. She will be going to Wyoming this spring to be buried with her, next to her mother.
Thank you for that. The other question I had is regarding the house in Huntridge that's proposed for nomination. I did read, and I didn't get a chance to go check it out myself, but I did read in the last week or two that there was a house fire. I believe it was next door to that house, and I wanted to know if anybody knew if the house was in question here was damaged at all.
I was not informed of that, no.
Okay, I don't know, like I said, I don't have primary knowledge on this. I read it in a blurb somewhere online, so I'll take a look on my way home and see if that was true or not, or if there was any adverse effect to the property there.
Okay, can you send me the address then, when you look at it?
Absolutely, I will, from where the report was. And then lastly, regarding El Dorado, does the city of Las Vegas, or I should say this commission, is there access to any sort of, anything, whether it's funding or like a trailer or a warehouse where something could be worked on or anything like that? I mean, depending on how grandiose the intention is for a float submission.
So that would have to come out of HPC funding. I mean, we do have funding. We will have a budget update at our December meeting to let everybody know what's in our budget right now. But that's the only funding that we would have for this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Move on to agenda item 19. This is an agenda item where commissioners can provide proposals for future Historic Preservation Commission meetings. Discussion
Excuse me.
regarding...
I'm sorry, you skipped 18.
'18 is 24-0544 HPC1, which is the report compiled by the Community Development Department regarding historic and archaeological resources in the local media. And it's part of the agenda packet. It's a report, not an action item. Any questions or thoughts? And again, please, if you see something in the local media, please send it to Dr. Seabrand for inclusion. The Huntridge, as pointed out, is there. And the Neon Museum, things are going on with that. Now we can move on to 19, which is an agenda item where the commissioners can provide proposals for future historic preservation meetings, discussions regarding topics for future agenda items, made during this portion of the agenda by the individual commission member shall refer solely to proposals, and any discussion shall be limited to whether or not such proposed items are within the purview of this commission, and whether such proposed items shall be placed on a future agenda. No discussion regarding the substance of any such proposed topic shall occur, and no action shall be taken. Any items that we'd like to see on the December?
Chairman Sturtle, I can't promise December. It's a future agenda item.
I know, except that we're within the 6-week deadline that. So, within a future agenda items, no commitment made to December, which already looks like a full agenda to begin with. Thoughts, comments? Anything on the agenda that we'd like to see? in a future agenda item? Daniel?
Commissioner Roberts, thank you. I'll echo my usual request to hear more about Huntridge Circle Park and what the plan is for it. Right now, there's a Maryland Parkway project is well underway, and there's a very deep trench that is, I think it's touching the park right now. So I assume the city has a plan in place. Myself and dozens, if not hundreds of other people would love to know what that is exactly. Beyond that, I'll just echo what I said in the past meetings regarding the 2050 master plan and conducting a good review to ensure that this commission is working within the realm of the proposed actions of the 2050 master plan. We want to make sure that we're in adherence of it. There's a very in-depth amount of historic information in there, and the term historic is used quite often in there, hundreds of times. And so I'd like to have a discussion to review the 2050 master plan and how that's being implemented here at the HPC. And finally, there is a continued issues with corporations buying up homes specifically in the historic neighborhoods or in the historic areas, and they are destroying these homes, not only historically, but they are actually doing great damage to them structurally, creating a adverse problem, just a straight problem for the new owners or tenants. I feel like it's a losing battle moving against these with the way that the code enforcement is so reactive and not proactive. I think we really need to get a hold on all the illegal and unsafe work that's occurring specifically on our historic neighborhoods.
Thank you. Let me echo Dan's on certainly the first couple, and especially just the principle of what Dan is talking about in the third as well. But it would really be nice if the Community Development Department could put together a presentation on the master plan. As Commissioner Roberts pointed out, the word historic, if you just search it, it's there a couple hundred times. And there are some very specific elements that are in there, everything from adaptive reuse. And it would just be nice if somebody could pull all that together, because it is scattered throughout, and help the HPC understand what the master plan is. So,
Chairman Stovall, if I can interrupt you, that will be on the December meeting.
and so I appreciate the quick response that this item will be on December's meeting.
Yes, this item is already decided. Marco Falata will be in to give a very comprehensive report at our December meeting. He's already agreed to it. I just failed to put it on the update list.
Right. And if the commissioners have not had a chance to review the master plan, it's solid reading. It's not just a dream. It's some of that stuff is already in play, but it's well worth taking a look at that. So if there are no other items, we will move on to the next item, citizens participation. And for the record, this is item 20. There are no citizens here. And so the next item would be item 21, and that says adjournment. And we are adjourned. Thank you all for a very informative meeting. Thank you.